I thought this was an interesting article. It kind of goes over why you should never use MongoDB, and it's not necessarily in everything. It's kind of a story about somebody who used MongoDB when they weren't supposed to. And I know this is supposed to be kind of like a research project, but I just thought it was kind of interesting because it's kind of a foresight to something that I'm sure we're all going to end up doing at some point or another. And basically, um, it's a story about this project called Diaspora, and it's something called the distributed social network. Um, they at the time wanted they started a Kickstarter for $10,000 um, to build a distributed alternative to Facebook, and anyhow, because Facebook was going through some privacy issues, they ended up getting funded $200,000. So they went ahead and started working on the project, and this is what it ended up looking like. Now, the distributed social network kind of works like this with these little pods, and basically, it was meant to be an alternative to Facebook. For example, in a country like China, where they block Facebook and things like that, diaspora would actually still work within the country, um, without being able to access pods that were outside of the country. So um, the legal issues there uh, were covered and things like that. Um, so moving on, this is how they decided to build it. They decided to use basically Ruby and MongoDB, um, and they ended up having some issues. So it was basically kind of like their structure. So right here they kind of go, you have two friends, and then you have friends that branch out, like so that you're the data structure, and your friends branch out from you. So uh, then it goes over Mongo a little bit. So it stores data in collections made out of individual documents, and it returns JSON. We already know all this. This is kind of how they were displaying their hierarchy. Uh, they, as you can see down here, you got many users, you have many friends, many posts, comments, likes, and then commenter and liker. Now, here's where it starts getting complicated. Is that a friend may be a user, but it may not be if it's not on the same pod. And same thing with a commenter and liker. So it's now starting to get um, more complex, and they ended up duplicating data, as you can see here. And then they tried using the IDs to link together all their documents and stuff. Um, and here's where they go in here. So they're basically saying, don't link the documents, because once you start doing that, then you're trying to force this relational structure onto a non-relational database. So it's kind of going into this a little bit more. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is it gives a glimpse into social media data structure, because it is kind of vague in how they are created, because you don't necessarily know um, what's needed, who's going to be there, what your friends are going to be. So anyhow, moving on. Uh, Here, there are only two hard problems in computer science: cache and validation and naming things. So they ended up trying to make their database just cache stuff. Um, and when that didn't work, explosions and stuff. So I'm just going to move down uh, to kind of like the end here, because this is kind of getting long. But basically, let me see if we can find it. Hold on, hold on. Yeah. Okay, right here, the conversion. So they're basically talking about, uh, that that Mongo really wasn't right for their project. The interesting thing is that they were a development team and they did their research, but it wasn't obvious to them. And I like this second paragraph the best. Um, it wasn't obvious at all. The MongoDB docs tell you what it's good at without emphasizing what it's not good at. That's natural. All projects do that. But as a result, it took us about 6 months, a lot of user complaints, and a lot of investigation to figure out that we were using MongoDB the wrong way. So, why this is an interesting topic and not necessarily one that goes over, technical database topics. I think it's a little bit interesting because, you can learn from other people instead of making the same mistakes. And they go over their mistakes in great detail. So I think it's a good resource to, keep paying attention to and read and get more familiar with other people's mistakes so you don't make them yourself. Alright, so that was my screencast on why you should never use MongoDB.